The subject I wanted to talk about at this session is one that I really mulled over whether we should really talk about. But I think that the problem that we are getting today in interpersonal relationships is getting so bad that I think we have to go into this and see how the Kabbalists and the mystics discuss the issue of interpersonal relationships, basically relationships between men and women, the concept of love. What is it? How do they see it? The reason we need to do it is because our society is becoming less and less interpersonal. We have less to do with each other than ever before. Less to do with each other. In the old days, before television, people would sit on the stoop and talk and get to know each other. You knew a person. In the old days in Europe, when a boy would marry a girl, they would use a shadchan, a matchmaker, so everybody in the town knew everybody else. What is happening in our society is we're growing further and further apart. And because as we grow further and further apart, we know less and less about ourselves. As television came in, people got off the stoops. They went inside. They had less to do with each other. Simon and Garfunkel talked about it in their epic 60s song, The Sounds of Silence. Hello, darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again. Because a vision softly creeping left its seed while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains, echoed in the sounds of silence. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, right? The words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls. The idea is truth, valuable things no one listens to anymore, and those who have what to say are out of frustration, they scrawl them in obscure places. So television came along and separated us to a great degree. And then came the computer. The computer totally separated us. We don't talk on the phone anymore. We email. And we've drawn ourselves even further apart through email. Tonight I shall coin a phrase and call this phenomenon e-malaise. Okay? That's what's happening. We don't relate and we don't talk. And what happens? People are getting along less and less. The divorce rate is up. If you come from a home where you're a mother and a father and you have a child, you are in the distinct minority in America today. The prophet Isaiah talked about it. He said, Rabim b'nei shamima mibnei ba'ula, more are the children of broken homes than homes where people are married. And that exists to this day. Only more so. So tonight, because of this, I want to talk about the issue of interpersonal relationships and about the concept of love. The first place we find the concept of love that at least the commentaries talk about is when God has decided to destroy the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, two cities. So he says, how can I do this without telling Abraham and giving Abraham a chance to plead for these cities? And the Torah uses the word, I have to tell him, ki yadativ, because I know him. Now, what does that I know him have to do with this? Yadativ, for those of you that may know Hebrew, comes from ani yodea, I know. So the commentary Rashi says on the spot, Yadativ means it's a lashon chiba. It's an expression of love, of ahava. So why is the expression to know, an expression of love. So Rashi says that someone who loves someone, Yodeo umakiro, he knows this person, he understands this person. To know, as the old song goes, is to know is to love. You can't love somebody really unless you know them and you understand them. That's the basis of love, according to the winemaker Rashi, who was also the great, that was what he did for a living in 1040 to 1105, but he was a great commentator, Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzchak. Love is synonymous with knowing and understanding. Love is synonymous with being there for a person. You cannot love someone if you don't understand what their needs are, so that you can be there for that person. So love is synonymous with knowing, understanding. What would you like for a wife? Well, I want the prettiest girl in town. I want this one. What would you like for a husband? I want the richest, nice, handsome guy. This is what I want. So in other words, when people marry or people enter into relationships, they have a checklist of what they want. What does this have to do with the biblical concept of love? Zip, nada, epis, nothing. Do you meet my needs in terms of what I'm looking for? I want a car. I want this kind of car. I want that kind of car. Vance Packer, from the old days, the great, the Status Seekers and all the other great books that he wrote, said that a man picks a wife like he picks a car. He starts looking for the convertible with the top down, but winds up with the trusty station wagon. But the idea is he has a checklist. All right? And the woman wants this. She wants this. I'm not saying always is that. Love, though, that's not love. Love is to know what a person needs and to be there for that person. Where do you find the first expression of love as to know a person? You find it with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, knew each other. It says, before she gave birth, it says, V'odam yoda es Chava ishto. Adam knew his wife, Eve. So everybody says, well, the biblical knowing mean is used as a sexual relationship. But that's not what it really means, although it means that, but it means carnal knowledge. But what it really means is before God would let them populate the earth, He wanted the love that they have to be a love of knowing who they are, knowing each other, knowing what each other needs, knowing each other's needs. That's the most important thing. When that happens is Adam knew his wife Eve, and she gave birth. So that again is a lashon chiva, a language of love. Now the Kabbalists get really, really specific, frank, and blunt. But I'm starting with the biblical basic interpretation. We also find when the Jewish people are suffering at the hands of Pharaoh, and they're going through the bondage, the slavery of Egypt, we find that they are told that Bayar Elokim es b'nei Yisrael, God saw the children of Israel in their sufferings. Vayeda Elokim, and God knew. What does it mean, He knew? It means He knew their troubles. He will be with them with their troubles. He understood them. That's a language of love. That's a language of love. Other things are meaningless. What I'm going to say now is not really for children. So if anybody is watching this, this is not for children. The Zohar says the following, the book of Kabbalah. Man and his wife, it says, Mikan ulifna, from here we learn, Demand mitchaber bi'antase, he who wishes to have, to make love to his wife, has to speak to her with sweet words and say beautiful things and nice things to her. And if not, he should not have relations with her. He shouldn't be in a situation where it's considered forced. The Zohar says that a man who has relations with his wife, if he doesn't talk to her and say nice things to her, it's rape. Blunt and straight out. That's it. Because speaking to someone, understanding someone, it has to be love. If there's no love there, then there's nothing there. So here you have a very delicate but deep concept here. A very delicate but deep concept. The Zohar says that at the time, Kabbalah says at the time of a relationship, when a man and his wife are having a relationship, there's a sexual relationship going on. At that moment, she should be between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, in the middle, between the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer Tov, and the good inclination. Now, what could that possibly mean? It's very deep. I've told you before, in Kabbalah, there's no such thing as ultimate evil in terms of that which God creates. Man can create evil, but there is no such thing as ultimate. That from the greatest evil comes the greatest good, from the greatest good comes the greatest evil. Somebody watching this on TV has no idea what I'm talking about, but just bear with me. Let's take the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. The Talmud tells us that one day the rabbi said, we have a great idea. Let's take a teapot and we'll capture the Yetzer Hara, whatever it means, analogy. I've talked about this before. So they captured it. So the chickens didn't lay eggs, the world wasn't populated, nobody went to work. So the evil inclination is not so evil. It is the dynamo, it's the dynamic which makes people do. It has a job to do. It's called the evil inclination, but it has a very positive thing that it has to do. So it says that the woman at the time of a sexual relationship has to be between the evil inclination and the good inclination. What could it possibly mean? It means this is how relationships go. There are two ways to look at relationships. One is to say the total evil inclination. What is the total evil inclination? The woman is an object, or the man is an object. He works both ways. He's an object. So therefore, if a person is totally involved in the Yetzer Hara and the evil inclination, the partner is an object of lust. Totally. It has no relationship whatsoever to knowing and understanding. Nothing. So the partner is just there, an object. Okay. So why does she have to be between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination? Why isn't it totally in the good inclination? Because the good inclination totally, I'm talking on a Kabbalistic level. On a Kabbalistic level. Now, don't misunderstand me. This is not, other people would have a hard time understanding this. The good inclination is, it's a mitzvah to have children. So I want to have children. So therefore I'm going to find me an object that I need to have children, and I'm going to do this mitzvah, and this other person there is just an object to help me It's a vehicle for me to do the mitzvah. The person is also an object there. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can be an object of lust and an object of total, what would the other side be? Total vehicle for a mitzvah, which is also an object. And how did we define love? We defined love as yodea umakiro, to know and understand and to be there for that person. And if the person is a total object of lust, you're there for that person. And if the person's a total object of just a mitzvah, I want to have children, you're not there for that person either. So therefore, that's my interpretation of what the Kabbalah means when it says the woman has to be between the evil inclination and the good inclination. There has to be both. There has to be passion, and there has to be understanding of the mitzvah, and it has to be both. And that's what the Rambam means, Maimonides means, when he says you take the middle path. Problems come about when people are either totally passionate, which is rape according to the Kabbalists, and even according to the Talmud, or totally distant from the person. This is the object. I'm going to do a mitzvah. I'm going to have children. Hello, how are you? Nice to see you. We're getting involved in having children. We should spend about 15 minutes at this, and that's it, and then we'll go and leave. Today, we are extremes. We are either totally passionate, without the person becomes an object, or many people, or you have problems, or people who are highly spiritual, who only see, I don't want to use the word spiritual, I don't want to sully the word spiritual, but who only are there because they're commanded to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody views it like that. The Kabbalah, not everybody sees it like that. Some people believe, yes. Some people in certain religions believe it's only, the relationship between a man and a woman is only for the purpose of children and nothing else. That's not true. It's not true. Now, are there any questions before I go on? Yes. Yeah.
Are you supposed to know this ahead of time when you first meet someone?
No. You don't know it ahead of time. Your question was, are you supposed to know this ahead of time when you first meet somebody? No. How can you? How can you possibly know? You have to understand the person. You have to know the person. There are customs in certain communities where the bride and groom don't meet. I don't know. That's on. I don't understand that. You have to, but they do it today. In today's market, you got a 50-50 chance at that. You got a 50-50 chance if you know the person much more intimately. But the fact of the matter is that you have to learn the person and understand the person and know the person. That may mean you want to enter into a relationship, well, it has implications I'm not going to go into because they'll be misunderstood. The way that the Zohar learns this, that you have to, that a man has to talk to his wife, and that it has to be he has to say nice things, Zohar takes it from an interesting thing. A lot of rabbis don't know this. It says Jacob, it says, and he came to the place, and he slept there that night. So the commentary said he asked permission to sleep there that night. So the Kabbalists say, well, he came to a place and he slept there and he asked permission. So from this they get the analogy that one doesn't sleep with one's wife unless she's willing, etc. This is a concept of that's brought down here in the Zohar. Now, the Zohar talks about this. Says that when a person, when God, first of all, I told you that Eve didn't come from a rib; she came from a side. She was split in half. This Adam-Eve creature was split in half, and that's what it was, an androgynous creature, and that became Eve. And he said and God brought her to Adam. So the Zohar says, from here we learn that the father and mother bring the Kala, the woman, into the domain of the man, and from that point on, the man comes to her because she is the house. The concept of woman is akeres habayis, which means the house itself. In other words, I'm not talking about legal possession or who owns what, but the woman is the house. She is brought by her parents, if her parents are living, of course, to the man, and then from then on the man comes to her. You get the analogy? Now, the Zohar says, the house is hers. Does that mean legally from a halachic aspect? I mean, I'm sure that doesn't mean that, but it means she is. If you look in the beginning of Genesis, you'll see all the time there that the wife is giving advice to the husband. Sarah is giving advice to Abraham and Rebecca, etc. So she is the house. This is the way the Kabbalists see it. Now, it also talks about various relationships here. The most interesting thing that the Zohar says is and I don't want to get into certain areas because they are really into the 10 spheres, and I don't want to talk about the spheres because the spheres are a description of God. That's the most ultimate secret of Kabbalah. I don't feel I want to talk about that. But what is happening here is that at the time that the husband and wife are having a relationship, God is there giving her chasadim, kindness. In other words, that moment is so incredible that she is the recipient of kindness and various things from God. Because what is God saying? That from this relationship, He's going to give a certain part of Him, which is the soul, that's going to come out of that relationship. So the act of a relationship between a man and a woman is the holiest possible thing. It's based on knowing each other. It's based on understanding each other. And at that particular time, God is giving things to the woman because she's going to be the repository of the soul. So that's the specialness. That's the specialness of a love relationship between people. Now, a man has to praise his wife, according to the Zohar. He has to say nice things. For instance, if a man leaves home, the Zohar says, he has to first pray in his house while his wife is still there, and the divine presence is with him. When the woman is in the house, the Shekhinah, the divine presence in the house, is in the house. The way that that a man conducts himself, that's the reaction he's going to get from his wife. If he comes in with an attitude, the attitude is going to be reflected out. So here you have the concept of love being a concept of knowing. Yes.
You said that when a man comes into the house, he brings the attitude into the house. Can it be the opposite way too? Can't the woman make the prevailing attitude?
That's true. Yeah, it's true. She can. And when he says man here, it's male-oriented. But it works both ways. Sometimes, but certain things mean only for the woman. But this attitude, you know, it goes deeper than, you know, a nice thing saying, well, if a person's nice, you have to be nice. That relationship is the highest spiritual relationship in the world. That's the highest spiritual relationship. The relationship doesn't, and the problem is that it doesn't make it, is people are just looking for themselves. They're looking out for themselves. Totally looking out for themselves. So, as I said, there has to be both. There has to be passion and there has to be feeling and understanding. Does that sound, let me ask you something, does that sound like, you know, like real just basic, what's the word I'm looking for, platitudes that you hear all the time? Or do you understand how deep that concept is? Do you understand how deep that concept is? The concept is, in a society that's the me generation, you're not going to be able to deal with that. The me generation cannot understand that. If you see yourself as a whole person, without someone else in your life, then you're not going to understand that. If you see yourself as a half of a person, then you are. If you see yourself as a half of a person. Because why should I do something for somebody else? Why should I do something for somebody else? There's no reason. Unless that person is part of me. Am I getting some strange reactions here? Why?
Well, I agree with you that the person has to really...
This is not me, this is the Zohar. This is the
Kabbalah. I agree with the Zohar that for a good relationship you do have to care and be a unit together, but I don't think that each person has to be half a person. I think each person has to be a whole, complete person, but part, half of a unit. Half of a couple, that should be the unit, but each person has to be complete and not be dependent on another person to complete him or her.
So if a person doesn't find anybody in life, it ain't so bad.
You're still not part of the desirable ultimate union or unit, which is how Hashem made the world for men and women to be together. But if you're just half a person, something's missing in you. And if you're not a complete person, you can't be there totally for somebody else either.
I would argue with that. I would say that if you don't have somebody else in your life is missing things. Well, I mean, the Talmud tells us an incredible thing, where it says, the Talmud says a fascinating thing. It mentions that Adam said when he found Eve, it says Adam said, "This time, the bone of my bone, the flesh of my flesh, this will be called woman." What did he mean, this time? That there was such an emptiness in his life, says the Talmud, that he had whether it means it literally or not. It means he attempted a physical relationship with every animal on the face of the earth until he finally found Eve. And Eve, it says this time, his passion wasn't cool until he found Eve. That you just touched on right now is probably the basis of all the arguments of what does it mean to have an interpersonal relationship with someone. What does it mean? What does it mean? Isaac, it says when Isaac found Rebekah, said Rebekah, he brought Rebekah into his tent, Vayinochem Yitzchak acharei imo, and Isaac was comforted after his mother. So Rashi says, in other words, Sarah, Isaac's mother, had died, and then he married Rebekah. So what does it mean? He was comforted after his mother. What does it mean? So Rashi says an incredible thing. He says, Kol zman shel imo shel odom kayemes koruchu etzlo. As long as a man's mother is alive, he's bound to her, tied to her. Umishemesa, and when she dies, umisnachem beishto, he comforts himself with his wife. That's a very good question, because what the Talmud says, therefore a man will leave his mother and his father, and so the Talmud says, what does it mean he will leave his mother? It means he's not allowed to have an ancestral relationship with his mother. He has to find somebody outside of his family. Okay. It's an interesting question, because there are many kinds of relationships that you can have with a person. You can have a love of your mother, that there is a certain element, there's a certain, I would translate it as the female essence. I would think the male, Freud talked about the Oedipus complex and the electric complex and what that means. And I'm not comparing it to the Kabbalists, but there is a necessary female essence in the life of a male, and there's a necessary male essence in the life of a female. And Rashi is saying that this young lady, very young lady, Rebekah, when he took her into his tent, she replaced the female essence in his life. What does that mean? That he needed mommy? No, it doesn't mean he needed mommy. It means that there's a female essence in his life that was missing when his mother died, and it's replaced with his wife. So many times I have seen as a rabbi, I cannot tell you how many times I have seen this in counseling people, that, and God help me, everybody's going to misunderstand what I'm saying. Just bear with me. I have seen families fight, okay? And when the matriarch, the mother of the family, passes away, there's shalom, there's peace. I don't know what's going on. I know what's going on now. What's happening is that when the matriarch passes over, the female essence goes into the woman in his life. I haven't seen it so much with the father, but I've seen it with the mother more. All right, everybody's nodding their head here. Let the record show, and it's amazing. The feuding stops. It's as if, and I think in the family, when you have family feuding, or no, in general, the siblings, the whole family fight, the whole family dynamic. Well said. It changes when the mother passes away. It changes. The dynamic changes, and what I think happens here is that the female essence, Kabbalistically speaking, that was there in the mother is now passed on to wife, or it's not interfering with relationships with the whole family. Now you see this with Yaakov, you see this with Ishmael and Isaac. When Abraham dies, his two sons who feuded bury him, okay? And that's not all they buried the hatchet too for a while. And you see this with Yaakov and Esau. My goodness, Jacob and Esau, Rome and Jerusalem. I mean, what's that? Edom and the Jewish people and the children of Israel. It says Yaakov and Esau, Jacob and Esau. As I remember, if I buried Isaac. It's an incredible thing. There's something about the dynamic of the family that changes. Now the old what's her name would say, dear Abby would probably say, well, now you realize you're not kids anymore, you shouldn't fight. That's not what it is. There's something spiritual going on. There's something incredibly spiritual happening in that dynamic where it passes on, that female essence passes on. Maybe they're no longer competing for her love and for recognition. I have seen it so many times, I can't believe it. People who are at each other's throats. You've seen that, huh? That is something else. And
maybe the relationship of the mother towards the children wasn't a healthy one. What about where there's a proper relationship?
What is a healthy relationship? I think parents try their best. And if the mother doesn't push the kid enough, she doesn't love me. If the mother pushes the kid too much, well, then she's driving me nuts because she wants her own to brag to her friends about how successful I am. Yeah, why don't we give parents a little break once in a while? To a degree. To a degree. We don't give parents enough of a break. They love us. They try. We try with our children. You do the best you can, but there's so much sibling rivalry, so much going on, so much ego, so much things. It's such a complex issue. If you're not a Kabbalist and you don't understand, you really can't understand what the basis of this. You're talking about a female essence. You're talking about things that go from mother to child. It's a really, really tough thing we're talking about. Is this in the way? Okay. Any questions or comments? So, after all, what are the two basic things that people are looking for in life? Acceptance and approval, the two A's. I want to be accepted and I want to be approved of. Those two things, acceptance and approval, are the basis in a love relationship, because therefore, to know a person is to understand that person needs acceptance and that person needs approval. And that's how the person evens out. What makes a person upset and act off the wall? Because they're out of kilter. All right? They're out of kilter. So what takes a person off that out of kilterness? What would take the person out of that is if all the problems are solved. The person feels balanced. The person feels, I told you, the whole thing comes down to balance. I'm out of balance, I'm out of everything. That's why the Maharal, Rabbi Yehuda Loew, who built the Golem, says that when the Jewish people are not in their land, the world is out of balance. Everything is balanced. If I'm balanced, I'm fine. If I'm balanced, I'm in a good mood. If I'm balanced, I'm smiling at you. If I'm out of balance, I'm upset. All right? So like car, on a spiritual level, it's like a car running smoothly. You need a tune-up. You need a spiritual tune-up. If the pistons are, they still have pistons in cars, everybody's replacing everything every day. The pistons in the cars are running smoothly and the timing chain is right, that thing runs smooth. On a spiritual level, not to belittle this thing, but oversimplify it, if I'm in balance, I'm fine. Why am I out of balance? I have needs. These needs aren't being met, so I can't function properly. So therefore, there comes along another person in my life and meets those needs. If that person meets those needs, that's called love. That's called knowing. I love you means I know you, I understand you, I am there for you. We are two halves of a whole. By your definition, by my definition, that's what it is. Why is the problem today? Because we're not trying to know each other. We're trying to checklist. I need this and I need that, and this person fits that mold. You have no idea how many times I see that with couples getting married. Check off, check off, check off.
Yes, but if the person finds somebody who will fulfill his needs, then there will be love.
There will be love for that person, but there won't be overall. But it has to go both ways. Sure, if you do everything, if you peel another potato for the kugel and do whatever you want, and you know what I mean, and wash the floors and iron the things, I'm going to love you because hey, you're the greatest thing ever happened in my life, right? But what am I doing for you? What am I doing for you? So therefore, you're out of balance because it's a one-way street. And it comes down to the concept of chesed, of kindness. It comes down to that ultimate concept that I want to talk about. Abraham, God says, ki yadativ, I know him, which means I love him. Because the basis of love is chesed, is kindness. What is the ultimate midah, characteristic, which will be the characteristic of the patriarch of the Jewish people, Abraham? What is that ultimate characteristic? Is it gevura? Is it power? Is it strength? Is it words? It's chesed. It's kindness. Where Abraham is talking to God and he sees 3 dirty Arabs. And he jumps up, says to God, excuse me, God, I know I just had an operation 3 days ago, and he leaves God to talk to these 3 dirty Arabs, or angels described as Arabs, and the Talmud says is gadol hachnosas orchim yosem mikabolas b'nei hashchina. It is more important to be kind to strangers, to take in guests, than it is to talk to God. And you see that from Abraham, because Abraham walks out on God. He says, excuse me, I have to have these people. Now, this is not meant as a slight at anyone. Last week I said something, when I talked about Polish things, I said it's not a slight at Poles. Today I'm going to talk about Arabs, not a slight at Arabs. Okay. What does it say? What does the world say? The world's concept of Arabs, and some of my best friends are Arabs. I don't mean that in a nice way. What is the concept of an Arab? The concept is, you finish the sentence for me. An Arab will take you into his tent, feed you, and treat you nicely. And what does the world say? When you walk out of the tent, what happens? You get stabbed in the back. True, not true. I don't want to make any ethnic slights against anybody. What does the Torah say about Abraham after he meets these people? He establishes something. He gives them food, and he lets them go. And it says, as they walk out, V'Avram holech imam l'shalcham. Abraham walks out with them, as if to say, no, this is not just some custom that I'm treating you nice because it's polite to do, and when you're out of my tent, goodbye. There's a concept of levaya, which means he walks with them out, which is a Jewish custom you learn from Abraham, that when your guest leaves your house, you're supposed to walk them 4 amos out of the house. Walk them at least 6-8 feet out, accompany them out of the house, to say, I'm not just doing this because it's a custom, I'm not just doing this because when you're important to me only when you're inside, but you're important to me as a whole person, and I take you out, and that's the custom, to walk a person out. So Abraham's ultimate goal is chesed, is kindness. And his wife, Sarah, who looks so smart and everything, because she says, let's talk about balance again in a moment. All right, let's talk about the concept of balance and in love. All right. What does it say? It says that Abraham was not able to send out Ishmael. All right? Was not able to send out Ishmael, and God says, and Sarah says, you get rid of these two, get rid of Ishmael and his mother, otherwise he's going to kill Isaac. Abraham is the ultimate midah of chesed. He is the ultimate characteristic of kindness. He says, I can't do that. And God says to him, what Sarah told you, you better do it. Do it. Okay. So now it looks like Sarah is the ultimate wise woman, and she's tough. And by the way, in Kabbalah, the woman is the tough one. The man is the more rachamim. It's the opposite. Women are known as being merciful. Women are tough, or din, or more the tougher in Kabbalah. The female essence is tougher. It's a fascinating thing. It's the opposite way. I can't tell you everything in Kabbalah because Kabbalah is too deep, and especially I'm talking on coming into people's living rooms with this. But it's a very interesting thing. So now what do we see? We see, fascinatingly enough, that Sarah is wise and says, send out Hagar. Okay? So Abraham is tested against type. Right? The ultimate midah of chesed, the ultimate chesed person of kindness, is said, take this kid out, just drive this kid out. God tests him. The ultimate kindness person is told by son Isaac, take him up to the mountain and let's see if you'll cut his throat if I tell you to. Right? Which is a biblical story. So let's leave it there. Isn't that wonderful? That Abraham, that sometimes you have to be tough on the Arabs and you have to be tough on Isaac. All right. But that's not what Ramban says. Nachmanides says an incredible thing. Before Ishmael is born, and Sarah can't get pregnant, she's having fertility problems, and she gives her handmaiden Hagar to Isaac. I mean, rather to Abraham. She gives her handmaiden Abraham Hagar to Abraham. She gets pregnant from Abraham, and Sarah still is not pregnant. So it says Vatekal Gavirta Beineha, that Hagar says, look, I'm getting pregnant here. And that was a big thing in those days. And she's not getting pregnant. She became disrespectful of her. Look, I'm the one that's going to have the child, and not hers. So it says Vataneha Sarai, that Sarah tortured her. Vativrach mipaneha, and she ran away. And Ramban Nachmanides says an incredible thing. Be'inyan hazeh, in this thing, chata Sarah imenu, that Sarah, our matriarch, sinned. She had no business torturing Hagar. But she was right, on the one hand, to drive them out when Ishmael, her son, is beating up, which was happening later. But the fact that she tortured her and afflicted her before that, chata Sarah imenu, she sinned. And Nachmanides, who's a Kabbalist, says, where he knows it, I don't know where he knows it from, but he says, he's a Kabbalist, he says, and because Sarah afflicted Hagar unnecessarily, that's why the Arabs have made trouble for Hagar's children. The Arabs have made trouble for Sarah's children, the Jews, throughout the generations. Can you imagine? People walking around Muncie, guys saying, yeah, I just saw this Ramban. What does that mean? They're like stunned, We thought we were always the good guys and they were the bad guys, which ultimately, when you consider Yasser Arafat and what he's done, that's true. There's no question about that in my mind, that's true. But that Ramban would say that because Sarah afflicted Hagar, that therefore Hagar's children, the Arabs, would afflict Sarah's children throughout the generations? Because why? Because yes, you're right about driving them out when he's beating up on Ishmael, but that doesn't mean you go ahead and do this. And that's why Judaism is is the smallest of religions, because we're not black and white. In other words, black and white. The Quran, Islam, which is the fastest growing religion, divides the world into two: the Dar el-Kharab and the Dar el-Islam, which means that which Islam has conquered and that which Islam is yet to conquer. All right? So if you haven't been conquered by it, you will be. I'm not making a statement, that's what it says. And what is so interesting about that is that so what do the Jews say? Well, Sarah's right here, but she's not right. What do you mean? Give me a clear picture of Sarah. What do you mean? She's right here, she's not right there. The answer is it's not so simple. That's what the answer is. It's not so simple. It's not so simple.
Sarah was an angel.
Yeah, but she was a matriarch. You see, to criticize these people as to who we were, it's always the biggest problem. When you understand that. We can't, to criticize Abraham and to say that Abraham, is like me and he likes potato chips, or he's going to stop studying because he doesn't like this or that. You can't say that.
Doesn't the Torah indeed show the humanness of the matriarchs and the patriarchs, to show yes, they were human, because most of them, some frailties are shown somewhere along the line each of them, to show that, yes, they were human, but they still had these great qualities, and that we shouldn't look upon them as angels whose qualities are impossible to emulate. But because they were human, that we can also try to strive to be the good part of them.
You touched on one of the most difficult subjects that have ever been around, and you're talking about what is David and Bathsheba, and what does that mean? Which I had bitter arguments with my teachers in school. Bitter arguments. All right, you really touched a nerve here. The nerve is you cannot say the patriarchs were like you know what I mean, just heroes who had failures and what do you call. Of course, they weren't perfect, but what does it? But their lack of perfection and our lack of perfection are totally different. That's the main concept that you find, and every time somebody looks in and says, "Well, look, Ishmael did this," and they look so human, and Joseph did this, and Joseph got the coat of many colors, and he made his brothers jealous, and they look like the Hatfields and the McCoys there, which is not what it is. Okay, it's totally not what it is. That's why the most dangerous thing to study is the Bible, because we can see in there really rough kinds of things. We can really see, problematic things. So what I would tell you about that is that's not an easy answer. You've touched on a difficult thing. No, Sarah is not some jealous wife who just says do this or that. No, and that's the way you're going to see it if you want to see it. She sinned in the sins that she afflicted her. Okay? Yes, right. And I have a lot of problems understanding that. All right, what does that mean? Ramban says it. Anybody? I would say it. I'd be removed from the rabbinical registry. But Ramban, Nachmanides of the Middle Ages, he was a Kabbalist. He can say it. But the fact that she sinned in that doesn't mean that she's less than Sarah. It's not easy to understand. It's not easy to understand.
We're having problems with that with Thomas Jefferson and what was just discovered about Sally Heming. His whole attitude towards slavery. And we're finding it very difficult to keep him as one. When somebody said we should remove him from Mount Rushmore now, because we can't look up to Thomas Jefferson anymore, which is ridiculous. We're having that problem just in our own history.
People who knock Thomas Jefferson, I knew Thomas Jefferson. He was my friend. And that person is no Thomas Jefferson. Again, there's a difference between the founding fathers and the patriarchs, and the founding fathers of this country.
What I'm saying is, even with the founding fathers of our country, we're having difficulty. So, and
how much more so?
Yeah, how much more so with the matriarch of Judaism?
How
much more difficult the problem is.
Yes, but I wouldn't compare the two. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. But what we're touching on is the source of so much anger and emotion among rabbinical circles. If one tries, here is a rabbi trying to tell you that this was the flaw that he did, and then when you react normally and say, well, then they're human, then the rabbi says, what do you mean? How can you say they're human? And then you say, well, you just told me they did something wrong. So it's a no-win situation. It's a no-win situation. To say that the patriarchs never did anything wrong, I got that from somebody. One rabbi said to me recently, "How can you say Jacob did anything wrong? He was perfect." And I showed him a passage where it says that because Jacob gave him a coat of many colors, and I tell you about that because worth X amount. Shumar Shabbos Daf Yudam Beis Shabbos 10b. That brought all the problems of the exile and et cetera, and we talked about Tosfos saying how it would. So what really happened there is a difficult thing to understand. Yes.
Wasn't the exile predicted before the story of Yosef?
Listen to the lady. She asked Tosfos Kasha. That's what Tosfos says. Tosfos says, what do you mean the exile came about because of that, because they shipped Joseph down? It was predicted by Abraham, right?
In fact, Joseph's going there saved the lives of the Jews because of the business with the food.
Okay, excellent question. And Tosfos says, on the spot, the commentary Tosfos was Rashi's sons-in-law, asked to say, what do you mean They thought, they thought, I know Tosfos, and I'm no Tosfos, I know that. But the point is, who's your friend? But the fact is that Tosfos asked that question. He says, what do you mean? It was already predetermined they would go to Egypt. He says, yeah, but the affliction was worse because of what he did. That's his answer to that question. That's his answer to that question. The affliction became worse. But you're dealing with the concept of love. Abraham is the ultimate concept. I can understand why Ramban says this. I can understand why he does it, to take a shot at Sarah Imenu, as Sarah the patriarch. I can understand because, again, she was right about sending out Hagar and Ishmael, but not right about afflicting her beforehand because she taunted her. I can understand it because Abraham was the ultimate. Abraham was to bring the concept of kindness to the world. That other people count. And his wife was doing something that was the antithesis of kindness. When it was necessary to be antithetical to kindness, she was necessary. But she was doing something that was antithetical to that. So he says, Chata, sorry, Meno. She sinned. Hate means sin. And can you imagine Chata? What a feminine form of that. She sinned. That's very strong language. I want to say something else, too. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, can do an incredible thing. You can study all your life to learn kindness, and he gets you. Like, friends, let me tell you how he gets you. The Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Israel Kagan, used to throw his rabbinical students out of the house of study at 2:00 in the morning. And they would ask, why'd you throwing us out? We're studying Torah. He says, yeah, it's the Yetzer Hara's evil inclination, because tonight you'll study for 2 hours till 2 in the morning. Your resistance will go down, and the next day you're giving God till 2 in the morning. Next day you'll be sick, and he'll you'll lose 2 or 3 days. So I'll give you an example of how the Yetzer Hara works. The evil inclination works on a human being. I was one time when I was a rabbinical student. And Yetzer Hara got me good. I'm studying the Chafetz Chaim. I'm studying the concept of kindness. I'm studying it very, very good. I really want to know this because when I'm a rabbi, I want to be able to teach the word of kindness. So I'm studying it. And somebody says to me, "Have you got some? Can you give me the key to the canteen? You have the combination of the canteen locker, which was where they kept the canteen, meaning the." And I said to him, don't bother me now. I'm studying about kindness. I haven't got time to do this. And then I realized that the words came out of my mouth. See? That's how the Yetzer Hara can get. Anyway, basically this thing started with the concept of love and relationships, and chesed is a kind of love. Chesed is a kind of kindness, because you realize that you're part of the whole world. That's what they say about Noah. Why did Noah, the most beautiful thing the Meshech Chochmah says about Noah, the most incredible thing, he says, in the beginning of the world, God put Adam and Eve on this world. All right? He put Adam and Eve on this world. And he put them in the Garden of Eden. And he gave them paradise. You don't have to work at all. And that experiment, the Gan Eden experiment, I call it, didn't work. Not God knew it wouldn't work, but man had to see it. Then what was the second experiment? The second experiment is God says, okay, I'm going to give you, the Midrash tells us, you have to work, but what did it work? You throw down seeds, food grow up. The kid was born, it starts walking and talking. Sounds great, Mom, huh? All right? So there was, everything was done for you. So what happened? So people had to work, but they didn't need anybody else. We talked about this before. They didn't need anybody else. So the Meshech Chochmah says, so then God says, okay, so they started to steal from each other, because if I don't need you, I have no respect for you. So I have no respect for your property, so I'm going to steal from you. God destroyed the world with a flood. Why? Says the Meshech Chochmah, so that the world that Noah had to take care of those animals, and these people had to watch out for each other, because Olam Chesed Yiboneh, the world was built on kindness, and we had to destroy everybody else in the world, start with Noah and his family, and teach them to care about animals and care about themselves. Otherwise, there's no reason for it. When the world came out, that's what happens. That's the whole kindness. The source of love is to know, and the source of to know is kindness and caring.
This is JMC, the Jewish Media Channel.